are you?
Great.
Yeah?
Great. Things are really, really good, man.
That's great. We just had a comment about low ceilings. You have a low is this your basement?
This is my basement office, vinyl game room office. Yeah, so this is fairly low. I'm 6'6". I probably have like 2-3 inches of clearance.
Yeah. Oh wow.
But actually there's like a drop like right above my desk. That I can't clear. Thankfully though, when I stand up, I'm not on it, but yeah.
Oh man, that would be that would be a bit difficult to deal with.
I've looked at plenty of houses that I couldn't like walk through the entire house, and that for me was like a no. Like like no matter how much I love the house, it's like if I literally can't walk through the whole house, then it's a no.
Yeah, of course.
So, I don't think it's too much to ask.
You know, at 5'9", that's not a problem I've ever had. Unless we're talking about walking through a dollhouse or something, you know, like.
Well, okay, but some historical houses, some of those are like, this house was built in 1836, and it's like apparently everyone in 1836 was 5'5" and below.
Man.
Yeah.
So somebody said, "Did you shave your head on accident?"
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh man. Yeah, I'm really excited to chat tonight. For one, I love finding excuses for my favorite people to come back on the show. And we haven't, you know, we've obviously talked here and there over the last, year and a half or whatever, but doing this is always a different thing for me, right? Where we get to like really connect and talk shop and just, really kind of, forget about everything else for a while. And that's really awesome. And I really enjoy doing that with you. I miss our meetings at like,
oh my God,
in Champagne beer places, like that's our best place to have meetings.
Yeah. And that's not, and so people who aren't familiar, like that's not a, like, we got drunk and nothing happened. Like we literally would have meetings and talk about topics and issues on the project and stuff like that, and work through stuff over beers at like local, at one of the many local bars in downtown Champaign. Yeah, there were plenty. There were plenty. Depending on just how far away from the office we wanted to get. But it was amazing, and some of the best memories I have from my time at Volition were just kind of hanging outside like the garden area of Quality, or even just like being down at Big Grove and noshing on a pretzel and just kind of chatting about shit and getting yelled at by rich people from around town.
Yep, that was my like favorite hang time of my entire life. Like that was a time where I would just like. We would randomly get together, and it was like a regular thing. And it's so funny too, because a lot of people, if you don't drink at all, a lot of people will be like, that wasn't what it was about, right? It was about hanging out, and being comfortable and having great conversations. So
yeah, really we had plenty of people who either didn't drink or couldn't drink that day or whatever, and it was there was a great sense of community and a great sense of like a really great studio feel, and it never felt like boys clubbish to me. It never felt like there was an inner circle. It was just like I hung out in those places with so many different people.
Yep, absolutely.
It was just great.
The thing that I really want to focus on tonight is writing as a discipline, but then also specifically how it moves into games, because there's so much nuance to that. It's so different, right? But I want to start with like, what got you excited about writing? And if you want to do a little bit of like a, hey, recap, here's who I am, what I did, what I've worked on, that's totally cool. I'm definitely really interested to hear, like, where did a love for writing start for you?
The love for writing started at a really young age. I loved to read as a kid. Since low single digits, I loved to read. And got into novels and comic books and everything I could latch onto, and at some point I just wanted to tell my own stories, and I don't really know like what that spark was. I think sometimes when you have when you get inspired to be something or do something at an early age, you don't always like recall what exactly it was. I didn't have that moment of like I met so and so or I saw so and so. I just decided I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to tell stories. I was probably around 12 when I decided I wanted to be that. And I just started writing. I just started short stories and just spent a lot of time plotting out, epic 12 novel series that I never wrote. And I followed that into my teens and into my 20s, but I kind of at some point I got really interested in video games. So I've been involved, or I've played video games my entire life. I tell people I'm as old as video games. And I grew up with the Telstar and the kind of hard coded. There were no cartridges. You bought the console. There were 4 games in it, and there was a physical toggle, right? They're like, what orientation of Pong do you want? And then moved on to the Atari 2600 and Nintendo and all that. So I really grew up with video games and got to see them evolve, and I've stayed with them throughout my entire life.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a point at which I wasn't doing games. There were times where I was like more PC focused than console and so, but
were you
always been
was it
games.
Encouraged? Like, did you have support through those things?
Yeah. So like, my parents bought they're the ones that obviously bought the Telstar. They got excited about getting an Atari 2600 and they brought that into the house. I remember I was probably in 7th or 8th grade and my dad surprised me with 8-bit Nintendo and a copy of Ghosts and Goblins because apparently he wanted to punish me.
All those early games, man.
What's that?
So hard.
It was so hard. I was like, again, it was the Mario Party Duck Hunt like two pack.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved those, and then I loved Ghosts and Goblins because he knew I liked horror stuff. Like even as a kid, I loved horror, and so that was a fun little horror game. But yeah, always, they've always supported it, and they, supported me having a career different than theirs. They both worked in factories their whole life, and they kind of wanted me to pursue dreams, right? And so they were supportive of kind of my non-practical, non-pragmatic kind of dreams of doing more. And I remember, wanting to get involved in video games just one night, just being late at night, and I'm online and I'm looking at the Konami website and the Capcom website, and I'm like, oh man, I'm seeing these job listings, and it's like, how do I become someone who makes video games, right? And I had dabbled in like Unreal modding and stuff like that, like really superficially, like early Unreal, like what like came with Unreal.
Yeah.
Like I owned a copy of Unreal,
right?
The non-engine, and it included an editor. Because I'm old, and so yeah, dabbling around with that. But and again, because real quick kind of career, who I am kind of thing. I didn't know how to do that, but I'd also played tabletop games, board games, card games my entire life, and I'd gotten into role-playing games in like early 90s, like 91 or something like that. So this is like 99, 2000. I'm in my early 20s, and I'm like, I want to do something more. I need to kind of like throw a Hail Mary. I need to do something. I need to change the trajectory of my life. And so I decided I can't make a video game. I don't know why I decided that, because people were. But I was like, I can make a tabletop game. So I decided to make a role-playing game.
Okay.
Called Little Fears. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about tabletop game design and the practical aspect of printing and publishing and all that. And that came out in 2001 and was a bit of a indie hit, bit of a critical darling. And that got me noticed. And it ended up getting me noticed by people in video games. Because there was a sweet spot of like I want to say probably from around 2001 to about 2005, 2006, where there were quite a few people that I met in the tabletop industry who are transitioning to video games. And there's I think a lot of reasons for this. I think some of it is like the people who were in positions to to hire for leadership positions, creative direction, creative leadership, design lead positions, had an interest in tabletop and had friends in there, and they were bringing them over.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, there was this. I lucked out in a couple ways. I lucked out in that Little Fears came out at a time when there was a glut of D20 products, and people were looking for something else, and it also was the beginning of kind of the indie the indie surge in the tabletop space, the
Yeah.
role playing space. If people, I don't know if anyone here is going to be familiar, but there was a online forum called The Forge that fostered a lot of discussion about game design, especially in the independent space. And so Little Fears just it hit the sweet spot at a time where not only could it be a kind of indie darling and a critical hit, but it could also be a bit of a tastemaker and also kind of get noticed. So it was just timing. It was dumb luck.
Yeah.
And then the same of that, it hit at a time when the video games industry was like, hey, we should bring people over from the board games and tabletop, and I ended up crossing over as part of that.
All right. That was also the time that like a lot of games like D&D were moving into the really moving into the video game space as well, right? With like Icewind Dale and all that kind of stuff was
Neverwinter Nights and stuff like that. Like, yeah, and it was interesting because it's also that time for people who are video game historians, apparently. That's the time of like early MMOs, not really early MMOs, but like World of Warcraft, hit in 2004, right? And you had a lot of the design paradigms from tabletop being brought over to the digital space. And beyond PC, which they've kind of always been, because D&D is, the gold box games and stuff like that from the 80s. Like D&D has been in part of, the PC game discussion for 30 something years.
Oh, yeah.
And so, it was just a weird confluence of events. And it was also at a time when, kind of at a third layer, when writing started to become part of the discussion in video games. Because it's like it wasn't. Games had stories, but they didn't have dedicated, craftspeople. They didn't have writers. They had people like, the lead designer wrote it, right? And so it was just a weird kind of lightning strike situation. And so I somehow ended up writing for video games, and I've always loved, and it was great for me because I'd always loved writing since I was a child, and I'd always loved video games since I was a child, and they were able to they came together for me and informed a huge part of my life and therefore a huge part of my identity. So
I want to talk about tabletop a little bit because it's such a it's almost a 50-50 meld of writing and design, right? Like you have to understand both in order to like, I'm not a writer. Like I'm a very to the point writer. If I could write everything in bullet points, I would, right? I want to get the point across. I'm not someone who's going to write something that's engaging and engrossing, that's not my skill set. But I'm glad that's not where I entered, right? Because I would have struggled there a bit. But if you have both of those skills or can develop both of those skills, like you are someone who I know has both of those skills, and I assume that's kind of where that started.
The interesting thing about tabletop, especially tabletop role-playing games, if you exclude the concept of modules and adventures and stuff like that, which are directed application of the concepts presented in the core book, if you're just talking about writing a tabletop rule book, what you're talking about is you're going to touch a lot of different aspects of writing, which you have your kind of fiction writing and your world building and your storytelling that's happening in like the cosmology that you weave. Like this is the world of the game, right? Like this is the basic premise of the game. And in Little Fears, it was like your kids fighting monsters. And so here's the world of monsters, and here's how it informs the real world, and here's the bridge between the two, right? And a lot of that is like, it's more what we think of when we think of like writing. It's prose writing, right? But then there's the second element of it, which is it's a game. It's a game, so now you need to make mechanics. And so the thing about mechanics, the thing about design that I think, I don't know, that I think about it a lot when I think about video games, or not just game design period, whether it's video game or tabletop, is that when you're talking about designing a system, what you're talking about is basically creating an argument for how something works. It may not be how it works in reality. It may be an exploration or a concept of something, of how something works, right? But it's what you're doing because you have to, and you can choose to make a simulationist and be like, "This I'm gonna try to recreate the real world with this," or you can make it aspirational and be like, "I think this is how something should work," right? Or you can bias it however you want, right? And so, but you need to come up with game systems. Like what tools are you going to give people when they're playing your game? Like, and that informs, that's informed by the world and the basic premise of the game, but it's also going to inform how players explore it. And so in Little Fears, it's like, there are kids fighting monsters, so I need to have fighting. I need to have tools for a child and a monster are in direct combat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to do was explore the concept of like belief. Belief is the magic, the literal magic of like childhood, and it's what they are losing as they age, and it's why, people my age don't see the monsters. They don't have that belief. They don't see it. And so that's kind of the core concept of like Little Fears. And so it's building those mechanics and making those interesting, and creating that argument for this is how things work in this world, and that's the design part of it, the system design part of it. But then you do the technical writing of I now need to explain this, and I can't explain it in prose. Like I can give examples in prose, but I need to explain it through technical writing because I need to walk people through how to actually apply these rules, when and where and how they function, right? And then there's the other element of I'm not giving you a game to play from A to B. I'm giving you the tools to make your own game, which is really the hardest thing about tabletop.
Yeah.
Like you can make the system, like the game system you make in tabletop is not going to be all that different from the system you make in video games. There are definitely differences in the expression. But if we're talking just about system design, they can be really close. And in fact, there are video games that use the D20 system that was built for tabletop.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're talking about verbs and percentages and randomizers and stuff. These concepts exist in both. So, but as a video game, you can be like, you're going to start at A and you're going to go to B. Tabletop, you do that when you create an adventure or a scenario or an episode, whatever you want to call it. But that core rule book is like, you've got to give them the tools to do this on their own. It's kind of like giving them, a game engine.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's basically what it is. You're giving them a game engine and be like, this is what the game engine does. And just like in video games, if you give me Unreal, I have the potential to make a different game than if you gave me like Game Maker or you gave me AGS, right?
Yeah.
Or you gave me Twine. Right? Like these, I can do different things with them.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So we got a question in the chat. What's the hardest part of adaptation of an existing story? In the case of Little Fears, you're building that system along with, your ideas of how that world works.
Right.
It's probably like, for me, the hardest thing is you have to create you've got to create the box in which your game is going to live in. It's the difference between something like Little Fears as a tabletop game and something like Savage Worlds as a tabletop game. And I love Savage Worlds, and I created a game world called Streets of Bedlam that used Savage Worlds. I'm a big fan, but they're kind of different in that the game system for Little Fears is built to basically do one thing. It's about to tell the story about kids fighting monsters against a ticking clock, where eventually they're going to lose their innocence and therefore not be able to see them anymore. It's about children existing in a world that doesn't believe them, that treats them like less than, but they still have to fight. Right, and they kind of have to have each other's backs. So that's the basic idea of Little Fears if we talk a little more heady about it.
Yeah.
Right, and so the game system is meant to do just that. But what that means is I'm making the conscious decision where it's like, you're not going to be able to tell this type of story. Or if you do, the game systems aren't meant to support it. You can tell it completely narratively, and maybe you could kit bash or home rule or whatever the game as written. But like the game is about kids fighting monsters and surviving, kind of fighting, like pushing against an overwhelming tide. Savage Worlds or GURPS or whatever your favorite generic system is, they're built to handle all scenarios. Right, they still have their own perspective. They still have, in the expression of those systems, they still have their own ideas. So they're not like completely bland, or at least they shouldn't be. And that's one of the reasons I love Savage Worlds is it's not bland. but they're meant to be like you can kind of do anything.
Yeah.
You know, and they need to account for that. Like in Little Fears, I don't have chase rules. Like there's no hopping in a car and you know Fast and Furiousing off you know the Burj Khalifa into a helicopter. Like it's just, I don't have any rules that handle that. Savage Worlds does.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, it's like you need to, you know, to do Little Fears with a game with a system like Savage Worlds, you need to add subsystems to get to that same place.
So with Little Fears, is that what is your thoughts on someone? Trying to think of the right way to ask this.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance that someone is going to want something like that's not provided, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you as a creator, is your thought like how do you think about that? Like, do you encourage people to expand that? Do you give them any tools to do that? You know what I mean? Like because you're you know, when we think about when we're making a game, we have an audience we're making it for, right?
Right.
And we sometimes completely forsake other audiences because that's not our, you know, our core audience. 100%. So it seems like that's a kind of a similar scenario here where you've built it for a particular thing, but maybe someone wants to do something else with it.
Yeah, so it's a fantastic question because like, you know, I'm providing the box, but I'm also kind of providing the hammer to destroy it with. Understanding that you're gonna break it. And so the original Little Fears, I do nothing. Like if you read the original Little Fears, like who the fuck wrote this? Like who designed this? Like you know what I mean? Because it's like your first game, right? You're like, oh my god, I can't believe people play this. And so when I did the second edition, Nightmare Edition in 2009, I was a better designer. I knew more. You know, I understood design better. So, but you know, in both cases though, it's about like there's a core mechanic, right? Like it's not a system of specialized mechanics. There are specialized mechanics, but there also are general mechanics, right? And so in tabletop, often in a lot of games, you will define a character. Everyone will play a character, and those characters will have basic attributes, and you will have some kind of mechanical system for them challenging themselves, whether it's intellectually or emotionally or socially or physically, right? It's the whole like roll to hit, right? That's the basic expression of that. And so you have a basic mechanic that will cover most scenarios, right? Like if a kid wants to jump into a car, it's like, all right, you have basic attributes. You have a table, you have a die system to roll dice, compare number, like, and then it's kind of up to the fiat of the game master to determine like, okay, well, this is how hard it would be for you as an 8-year-old to be Dominic Toretto, right? And so it's there, but what's lacking is hard guidance on how to deal with changes in elevation or velocity, right? That some games will get into, because some games will get very nuts and bolts about like, oh yeah, so you turn the steering wheel 15 degrees and you're traveling at 85 miles per hour at a 32 degree incline, blah blah blah, right? Like that's not the game I made, so you're not going to have that kind of support if you want to get real nerdy about it.
Yeah.
But it exists, but it's also accepting that it's going to be a little more Goonies, right? Like it's not going to be Top Gear. It's going to be Goosebumps.
Right? A little more Goonies. That's interesting. I've never heard someone reference that way. I like it. So, all right. So let's talk. You went from this into video games.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about what that was like, but then also like how does that transition happen, and then what was your kind of overall thought process about here's what my skills are, here's how they translate.
Mm-hmm.
Do I see deficiencies, like what was your kind of initial thought process moving into games professionally?
My first initial was I'm so excited to be here, right?
Yeah.
Like I can't believe I'm sitting at the adult table, kind of a thing. Which that's honestly the number one thing I try to like push down on people who are new to video games is don't be so in love with it. It's awesome. Video games are awesome. You are a toy maker. It is a great place to be. but also it's a job. Right. And that means a lot of things. I think a lot of people think like it's a job, like it's all negative. No, there's a lot of positive to that as well. Personally speaking, it's like I knew nothing. I had pulled back the curtain and oh my gosh, there's someone controlling the wizard, right? And so it's like I learned the habits that existed, which in 2005 to for many years, 2005 and many years later, they were just stealing tricks from other media. And so, it's like, oh, here's the screenplay for the game and stuff like that. So I learned like, okay, well, they use screenplays and stuff like that, right? And then I started working on other projects and other studios, contract gigs and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, they're using spreadsheets, because it's better integration with the tool sets and stuff like that, right? So the first many years of my career was just kind of looking around at like, oh, this is how things are. Right, like these are the tools they use, and these are the software they use, and this is the kind of mindset they have as far as story in games, right? Which is very like the traditional story in games is play game, here story, play game, here story, repeat credits, right? And over time, as I got more familiar with video games and started to think more critically about video games and story in games, and stopped being so in love with how things are done and started thinking about how things should be done. I started to see a lot of deficiencies in video games. And so that's kind of my, I started to develop a passion for storytelling in video games because of how bad we are at it. And that's not to say the content of the quality of it. Like we are past the point where we can have conversations about, is writing in games good? Like it absolutely can be. There's tons of games where it's fucking amazing, right? And there's tons of games where the cinematics are incredible, right? And there's tons of games where the immersion is on point. Like we are past that conversation. And if you are still having it, then you are not familiar with video games. Right. And that's the end of a conversation, right? Like play more games. Yep. Absolutely. And I have a list of recommendations. Like we're doing incredible work when it comes to the quality of storytelling in video games. The conversation we need to move into now and need to really start having, and we're having it in pockets, and we're seeing small innovations in the AAA space. We're seeing larger innovations in the indie space because it's a safer it's a safer batting cage, right? Is how should video games be telling stories? And there's no one answer. It's a question with 1,000 answers. But that's really the conversation we should start having. Is how do we leverage what's unique about interactive media and its potential for telling story. And that's kind of really where like I have a high level of interest and passion for that conversation. And so what I decided I needed to do, one of the things that I think, one of the things I tell writers and people who are interested in writing for video games is learn how to write everything, literally everything. Don't come in here thinking like, I love screenplays, I love writing movies. It's like we're past those days. Like there are some studios where that's kind of how they format their overall story, but it's like that's not what we're doing here. And you learn how to write screenplays, learn how to write character bios, learn technical writing, learn how to write snappy ad copy, right? Like learn how to write a 2-line description that gets people excited about spending 3 XP on this perk. Yeah. Right, because that's what you need to do. And learn how to write everything, literally everything, because video games are weird chimeras. Yeah. Like they There's so much happening in video games, and this is true in writing, this is true in design, this is true in art, right? Video games are just a strange beast that is actively evolving in front of our eyes. Yeah. And if you want to jump on that now, you have to have a very robust skill set if you want to excel. Yeah. But also you have to have an eye for what that future is. So have the baseline solid, because it's ever changing, which isn't to say like it's less ever changing and it's ever evolving. Yeah. And in writing in particular, start thinking, if you're a writer in games, get really good at the craft of writing, get really good at design. Do not think that they are separate in any way. you're going to meet a lot of people my age who have this idea of like it's story versus design. Like those people are dinosaurs. Don't listen to them.
Yeah.
They are one and the same, which isn't to say like everything is a supermassive game. Everything's Until Dawn. That's not what we're talking about here. But what we're talking about is like story is what's happening when the player is controlling a character through an environment. Story is what's happening when they're advancing their character tree. Like story is integral to every aspect of it, but most importantly, writing is going to move in some games. Writing is going to move beyond. We are mimicking the tools of movies and we are mimicking radio plays, and it's going to be we are doing something only possible in the interactive space. And that requires, if you want to be more than just someone filling a fast food order, you need to be part of that conversation, which means you need to start thinking from a design perspective.
Yeah. And it's funny because I agree with everything you've just said. And the way that I think about it now is what we're really talking about is immersion overall, right? Because people that say they don't care about story or then story isn't important to them or whatever, even I think the most fulfilling experiences now meld that together so well that you don't even realize you're getting the story behind something as you're experiencing it.
Right. They don't want to be distracted.
Right.
Is what I'm hearing from a lot of people.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Like, but that's because the truth is, if the people who don't care about story, if they didn't have that hook in their in their brain of like why they're collecting the green gems, right, or why they're collecting this or whatever, like you see it in games, right? Like, hey, I need you to, I lost all my newspapers. Go around and collect 50 newspapers, and I'll give you a toy, right? Like that's video games, right? That it's that bit of that's writing. Like whether a writer did it or not, that's writing. Like it's contextualization. You're contextualizing why you need to collect the 50 newspapers, why you need to collect the 400 feathers, why you are searching or why you're chipping away at rock to get the whatever ite, right? For your armor. That you're helping people kind of parse a lot of different systems, because otherwise you're just looking at, you're collecting currency A for reward 1, you're collecting currency B for reward 2. Like in the code, that's what's happening, right? The context, providing some level of context to it, is what's going to make it sticky in people's brains. To be like, oh, that's right, I need to do this for the armor. Even though it's like, no, what you're doing is like interact with these points and you'll get a defense buff. Yeah. Right. But like that kind of context is super important. So and I would say like 99.9% of the time that's important to the people who are like, I don't care about story in games. Yeah. It's like you just don't want to be distracted. You're not interested in watching a movie while you're playing a game. You're not interested in reading a novel while you're playing a game. You're not interested in having a 1940s radio drama in your ear while you're playing a game. And I understand that. But you care about story, probably in a way you don't really understand, or like, or a way you're being dismissive about. Yeah. And I think, when you're talking about that immersion, like, it's such a huge part of it. Like some of the best storytelling in games doesn't have a dialogue to it. Like I think of like the Arkham games and going into an area and you start to understand like, oh, the Joker's been here. Like this is like a Joker hangout. You start seeing real weird shit on the walls and you see like TVs with weird static and neon laughing signs and stuff like that. Like there's a great element of storytelling happening there, of world building happening there. It doesn't have any dialogue to it. And that's one of the reasons that it's like a lot of people need to be storytellers. The writing team can be the kind of hub that all the kind of narrative elements flow through, but it's like, you need to have everyone invested in the overall story of an experience. And yeah, it's just not about being distracted. And I think you're going to see a couple different veins, because I think video games right now is kind of a meaningless term, because really, like, without some concept of genre, like what is video games, right? Like it's too broad. Yeah. It's like saying movie. It's like if I ask someone, do you like movies? And it's kind of a dumb question. It's like it's too big. It's too big. Right. Like you saying yes doesn't mean anything to me. It's like, well, what type of movie do you like? Right. Right? Because it's like you may only like Werner Herzog films, and it's like, all right, cool. I guess we're not going to go see, the next Marvel movie. So what we're going to see is, like, I think we'll start seeing more concrete terms for what kind of interactive media and video games is, and some of those veins are going to be very much about like distractionless storytelling in games, where the story is completely integrated into the active part of the experience, which is like what the player is doing, and how the game is reacting to the player. So yeah, it's going to be a big part of that conversation.
Man, you said so many great things there, and it's funny as you were getting to it. Storytelling is what came to mind for me too, because like it's such a, it brings it all together, right? The storytelling is not writing, right? Writing is a part of storytelling. Storytelling is more about the experience, right? Stories have been told how many different ways over time, and I love that part of it. I want to jump back for just a second though, when you were talking about learning different types of writing, learning all these different things. And I want to talk about the inter-team part of this, right? Because part of what we do as designers and writers and anyone in a team is we're communicating to our own people and getting everyone behind what we're doing so that everyone's on the same page to create this cool thing together, right? So what kind of thoughts and experiences have you had in on that side of things, and or even difficulties, as you were moving into games?
So, oh man, like, I mean, you've sat through plenty of my presentations.
They're wonderful.
Thank you.
You actually you're really good at presenting to teams. So.
Well, thank you. I have a lot of fun, and it's because I just go in there trying to make myself laugh. That's really it. I'm proudest of my Breakfast Club presentation I gave. But yeah. So, oh man. So, look, I'm going to say something that's blatantly obvious, which is writing is communication.
Yeah.
Right. And communication is the most important thing in video games. It is more important than literally anything else in game dev. Because if there wasn't communication, no video game would happen. Period.
Yeah.
Except like the video game where it's one person doing everything. It's absolutely essential.
Yeah.
And what that means is, like, everyone needs to be good at communicating. But writing will often deal with less tangible, more heady concepts than other disciplines. Which is not to discount, like, a lot of art direction and stuff like that can start out kind of very soft and idealistic, and then it starts getting like like really kind of formed into concrete ideas and concepts and deliverables. And that happens with writing too. But, writing often will be called on to, you're going to talk about the overall world. Or the characters, or the concept of the game in kind of a larger, like, again, headier kind of idea or format, because what you're doing is ultimately trying to inspire a group of people, right? Like, if your job on the writing team or in the creative team, however it's packaged, right, for that studio, your job is to sell people on the big dream of this game. What you're not giving them is answers to every single question they're going to have. But what you need to do is give the people who are going to answer those questions the tools and the support to be able to do that, right? At least at some level, right? And I think when you see breakdown between art and design and art and writing, where you play a game and there's like, man, things are off, things are weird, right? Like, what happened there was, like, there wasn't a concrete vision that was executed upon, and there can be lots of reasons for that. It can't just be blatant disagreement with that vision and people going rogue, right? It could be that the right people aren't enforcing that vision, but it's probably because that vision wasn't truly understood and it wasn't expressed.
Yeah.
And in the writing team, you need to be able to do that, but in a way that is going to inspire others, not in a way that's going to just give people marching orders.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to do that, which is a delicate balance between getting to what's awesome about the thing you're doing, because you need to get people excited, but also giving them meaningful information about this world. Right? It's not just about, like, it's not just a vapid halftime rah-rah speech. It is also the on the field battle plan for how to get the ball into the end zone.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of both of those. And you need to be able to do that, which means you need to, and I don't know, I'm not even into sports. I just use sports metaphors, I guess. But you need to be able to do that in a way that is, again, just it's going to get people excited. And it's like kind of, to speak about like the presentations. One of the things I loved about the presentations, and God knows I've given a lot, is it's an opportunity to inspire, right? And it's an opportunity to reignite a fire in people, because and a lot of, especially as games get bigger, more complicated, dev cycles become longer. As games as a service becomes the norm, continued post-launch game development cycle becomes a thing where you've got to remain excited about the thing you're doing, not only for the 4 or 5 years it took to ship the V1, but for the life of it. I think of like, games like, I haven't worked on them, but games like The Division. Like, I love The Division 2, and I played a lot of its post-launch content. What you need are people who are super excited about it still. And that can be really hard. And I have always looked upon the writing team to be some of the biggest cheerleaders for it. Because we should be excited about what we're doing, and part of that is delivering on that excitement and getting it in front of people and maintaining it. And that's one of the things I loved about giving presentations. I felt like it was a time to like get people excited again about what we were doing when we were knee deep in the sludge, just trying to find our way through the swamp, and weren't really feeling super excited.
Yeah, man, I 100% agree. Like, communication is just such a big part of game development in general, like you mentioned, but that the games take so long to make, right? That it is so easy to kind of lose that luster over something. Or like you mentioned, maybe I don't even agree with something necessarily. It's still my job to do my best to, to make that thing come to fruition. And the more excited I can get about it and the better understanding I can have of it, the better chance I'm going to have of doing that.
God, that's huge. Yeah, because as 100%. Like, look, the worst thing you can do as a member of a studio working on a project that has like 100 people, 200 people, 500 people is sabotage the fucking project.
Yeah.
Like, don't do that. You may not agree with the direction, but unless you have a solid reason to think otherwise, like, trust that the person making that decision has a reason for it.
Yeah.
If you think they don't, it's probably because you don't understand how they got there. Yeah. So talk to them. And ideally, hopefully, you're working at a place where you can do that. And if you're not, that's a different conversation you should be having. But like, that's ultimately what it comes down to, is like, it's your job as a professional to deliver on this. Yeah. And so you need to understand it as best you can. Whether you agree with it or not, you need to understand how that happened. Because if you don't understand how a decision was made, it might be because you're misunderstanding a fundamental part of the project. Yeah. If you look at a decision that was made, and you're like, what idiot decided this? And it's like, well, an idiot who informed a large part of the project. So It sounds like you're not understanding something that got them from this to this. So work on that first. Yeah. But it's also part of being, part of the craft. As someone who has done plenty of work for hire, part of the craft is executing on stuff that you kind of don't care about, but still doing a damn good job because you love the craft. And I saw that comment. Miss Krypton. I see that. But you love the craft, and you're able to execute on whatever the task is, even if you're not like, it's not your heart's desire. Speaking of heart's desire, hello, Miss Kryptonite.
I love it. So there's change gears just a little bit. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you and I talked about that we want to make sure we talked about here is how games take from other media, right? Because we've talked a bit about how, there's similarities, there's things that overlap, but Like, what are your thoughts on kind of how we have traditionally and maybe even continue to pull things from other media that maybe even aren't the right way to do things, but it's just the way that they've been done?
I think it's a lot like a child mimicking its parents, right? And then eventually you learn how to do things on your own, and there are things you carry over and you retain from your youth, and there are things that you decide don't work for you. Right? And video games right now are kind of in an adolescent phase. There was no language for how to tell story in video games. There was no great concept for how to tell story in video games for a very long time. And so when it came time to tell story in video games, people looked at how stories were told. Right, and that's how we ended up with cinematics. Like cinematics are just an accepted part of video games, and it's like, someone at some point early in the history of video games had to decide we're going to stop everything and play a movie right now. Right, and that's something I think people don't really think about. Like someone made that decision. Like they could have made any decision, and that's the one they made, and it was a huge decision that informed the path. It was a watershed moment, informed the path of video game storytelling, right? And it's like, well, how are stories told in movies? Well, let's look at the movies, right? Let's use their format, let's use their concepts, let's do this, right? The concept of like we're gonna have camera cuts, and we're gonna make movies, we're gonna make little micro, and we did it as best we could in the early days. And we have grown to try to push that path. And the concept of like getting over the uncanny valley, fidelity, have more robust camera controls and like that. Like that's all built with this idea of like, let's make movies and games. Right. And then there's the concept of like audio logs, right? It's like, well, we need a way to tell story as a reward for collectibles that is like, we're not just stopping. We don't have the time for it. We either don't have the time, budget, or it's not worth doing a movie. So let's just do an audio, right?
Yeah.
And that's a radio play. That's what you're doing. You're doing a radio play at that point, And so you're learning that, and you can draw parallels to early radio plays. Some earlier radio plays were just one person telling a story, right? And like that's it. They're just reading that. And some were more robust productions where you had a dude with a sheet of metal be in the rain outside, and it's a very similar thing, and that's what we were doing. And then we have like tomes of lore. It's just writing. It's it's kind of it's diary, right? But it's a lot of times, but it's writing. And so that's what we're doing is we looked at other media and like how are they telling these stories, and we just stole from them. And then we started to think more about interactivity, and we were like, what if there's player choice, right? And so when people think to this day, 2022, when you talk about player choice, people are like dialogue options. And it's like, yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one, right? It's a very evident player-facing thing. So when we're talking about Mass Effect, and we're talking about how close you are to sleeping with that alien, that's what we're talking about, right? Like, did you pick the right dialogue? Did you make the right decisions? Are you gonna fuck that alien? Like, that's player choice, right? So, so then that's a good one, but there's far more than that, right? Like, when I think of, I was just talking about this earlier today with someone. When I think about great narrative systems, one of the ones I always bring up to people is the Nemesis system in Shadow of Mordor. I think it's one of the best narrative systems out there. I probably talked about it on your previous, but I'm too drunk. I was too drunk at the time for me to remember. So, but it's my favorite procedural narrative system.
It's really cool.
It's really cool, and it was built. I guarantee it was built because they're like, we need an evergreen system. We need a way to repopulate the open world, and we need a way to extend our golden path, right? And so it's like Nemesis system. What if, right? And the whole dream of the chessboard came. I'm editorializing. I have no idea how this actually happened, but in my head, that's how this happened. And it's great at being that. It's great at being a gameplay system.
Yeah.
But then people came in and they were like, what if we gave them personalities? And what if we gave them really cool presentation when they enter the board, right? And there's the drums and there's the chanting and like, right? And what if we gave them lines that spoke to the history you had with them.
Yeah.
Right? Where they were calling back to like, wait, I killed, you're like, I killed you from the bush. That's what you're thinking. Like, I stabbed you. But what you hear is that guy going, oh, there's nowhere for you to hide this time. You're like, oh shit, he remembers. He remembers how I killed him last time, right? There's tons of that. And it's like, that is a beautiful story happening there. It's a simple story, but it's a beautiful story. And most importantly, it is a story unique to me. You and I can play Shadow of Mordor beginning to end. We're going to have the same basic golden path. But how we engage with the Nemesis, how we filled and adjusted that chessboard is going to be drastically different.
Yeah.
And that to me is fucking exciting. That is awesome. That's interactive storytelling.
Yeah. Not to mention replayability in that case, right?
Right, because it's like I'm going to learn a different story, and it's not that I'm going to choose different dialogue options. It's like I'm going to engage with the game how I choose to engage with the game, and it makes me feel like I'm part of that world. And for the people who are like, I don't care about story, it's minimal distraction. Yeah. There's a couple camera cuts of like, oh, here so-and-so's entered the battlefield, right? But it's also just a great example of how system design and narrative design can exist in the same space.
Yeah.
And create a much better experience, right? But there's also things like, I'm just kind of going through like I talk about these a lot because these are kind of my touchdowns. But I think like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Spoilers for this. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't played Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. You control two characters. You control one character with the left stick and one character with the right stick. You're controlling brothers because it's a tale of two sons, and you're going off to find something to heal your father. And late in the game, the older brother dies. Half your fucking controller is now dead.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, spoilers. Sorry.
No, that's cool. I like that.
But now you're using that other controller and it's controlling the younger brother. Right? Now you're using the whole controller to control the younger brother. And it is incredible and powerful because you have controlled the younger brother and the older brother this entire time. Mm-hmm. And you've heard, and it's not especially story heavy, but you're getting to learn this. And it's like, oh, the left half of me, the older brother, is doing this to solve the puzzle, and the right half, the younger brother, is doing this, and I'm working in conjunction. I'm literally playing two characters who have to work together to solve problems, to lower bridges and set fires and get sneak past enemies and whatever. And now one of them is gone. And I have to learn to play the game as just the one brother. And it's just an incredible, incredible story, way to tell a story that's only possible in interactive media. Like there are plenty of movies and books and TV shows and whatever where, oh, the important character died, but you weren't controlling them. Mm. They weren't they weren't acting as an extension of you. So anyway, that's incredible. Like that's the incredible potential of interactive media, and it's distractionless. Right? It's completely integrated and immersive, and it doesn't depend on audio logs, doesn't depend on cinematics. So, but that's not player choice, but that's just another example of like the potential of interactive storytelling. And we've only really started to have this conversation. Firewatch is another great example, right? Of like how and when you go through the match or the map, like the story will happen differently as far as when you are engaging with things. And it's kind of distractionless. It's phone calls and a couple events and stuff like that. But we're just now starting to kind of figure out that there's more to it. And that's where that's one of the reasons I think you're going to see such a divide in what video games are and why the term video games is going to become more and more meaningless, because it's like, the supermassive paradigm of we are making interactive movies is entirely valid. Yeah. I've played, a lot of their games and I love them. I think they're doing wonderful stuff in the space, right? I think, Life is Strange has a bit more, is kind of close to that paradigm and has a little bit more gameplay to it. And I think the stuff that's being done by Don't Nod and Deck 9 is absolutely incredible, right? Just like I think a basic strategy game or puzzle game, Baba Is You is not have a heavy story, right? It has just its right amount of story. So the idea that you're going to be like, well, Baba Is You and Life is Strange are the same. It's like, no, Just like, it's just like, your favorite documentary and stuff on Pornhub are the same. Like they're not, they're
similar.
They're movies, but they're not the same. And it's similar to what's a Twitch stream without a Pornhub reference? But it's similar to that. It's similar to that conversation, right? Of like, it's the term doesn't mean much anymore. We're beyond the days of like, is it Mario or is it Zelda? It's like we're having much bigger conversations now. And even Knights talk about Zelda, right? The storytelling that happens in Breath of the Wild, right? Like it's almost like it's almost like an expansion of like the Firewatch stuff, but at a much grander scale, right? There's just there's a lot of conversations to have about storytelling in video games, and we're really just starting to have that conversation. And it's something I think we need to encourage, and it's something I want to explore. Well, I want a lot of exploration in. It's easier to do in the indie space because they're indies, right? Like especially the ones where it's like this is three people in a studio apartment working on a game together, right? And it's like they come home from their day jobs and they're doing this because they're they don't have $100 million budget on their back, being like, you better return on investment or you're fired.
Right.
When you have that, when you have $100 million, when you have, at stake or more, when you have 4 years of development, when you have a 200-person studio at stake, the room for innovation is smaller.
Yeah.
Because the conventional wisdom is the audience wants what it already has, but new.
Yep.
Right? Which there's some validity to that.
Absolutely.
Like if you look at sales, like there's validity to that.
Yep.
So you see smaller innovation, safer innovation in a way. And sometimes by safer innovation, what I mean is they're taking something from the indie space and doing it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the indie space has already proven what worked or what didn't. And so it's a safer play.
Yeah.
But the biggest swings are most certainly happening in the indie space, I think.
It's always been that way, right?
Always.
Like, and I think back to games
film,
like,
right?
Yeah, exactly. I think back to games like Limbo, like things that were just so unique and different, and no big studio would have ever, put the time and money into something like that, because it's like you said, it's a gamble, it's a risk.
Yeah.
And the bigger the studio is, the more now we've got shareholders, we've got, profitability that is the main driving factors at a lot of big companies, and it's tougher to innovate. You're right.
Yeah. But what I would love to see, like, look, I mean, there's the blue sky 100% aspirational part of me that is like, I would love to see a huge budget game that is all big swings. It's not going to happen, and I understand that. But what I would love to see is a studio that is a bit more secure, a studio that isn't writing solely on their next release or its shutters.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I would love for them to dedicate a 30-40 person team to take a big swing.
Yeah.
Use your established tech. Like if you're a big studio that pays a lot of money, you've got really good talent, and you're not letting them innovate in that space in that way. Like, not to say you're not innovating, but you're not innovating in that space probably, right?
Yeah.
Let them innovate. You have top talent. Let them take a big swing in a space no one else is swinging, at a studio that has the tech and the art team and the talent and all that stuff, where they can do this without going like, well, it failed, so bye everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love for them to have that, take that then and roll it into whatever their main franchise, whatever their moneymaker is, right? Like I, to go back to Shadow of Mordor, the Nemesis system was a huge swing. It was a huge swing by Monolith, who's historically, Monolith, one of my favorite studios. Their work is incredible. I love the stuff they've done over, throughout their history.
Yeah.
And it was awesome to see them take the open world paradigm where they didn't, hope I'm not burning bridges here, but they didn't innovate hugely in the open world space.
Right.
Right. Like you saw a lot of Assassin's Creed in there. You saw a lot of pretty safe plays. Well done, but safe plays. But they took a huge swing in the Nemesis system, and I think it paid off wonderfully.
It's interesting. Like, it's such a huge swing. It was the foundation of everything, right? Like, and I think it was a case where it was the right focus for something like that, right? Because for those of you that don't know, the basic way the Nemesis system works is there's, a series of enemies that you fight that have particular things about them, right? So it's they have weaknesses, they have things that you can learn about them, and as you go throughout the world, you can do things to unlock and learn more about them. And then when you take that guy down, the guy behind him now steps into that role, and now he has a whole new set of things. So it's like this whole unique story of, and every time it was different. And
you create vacuums on the chessboard where like, oh, I eliminated this person, and then some random goblin takes you down, a random orc, sorry, Mr. Tolkien. Some random orc takes you down, they get promoted. Yes. Now they have a name, now they have attributes.
Right. And that's all dynamic, right? And the system, and like from us as a developer perspective, we look at it and we're like, there's a roll of the dice, right? Like there's like these series of attributes are some may be weighted more heavily, but it could be, a certain amount of randomness, this kind of stuff. But you just don't know as a player what that next guy that steps in is going to be like, or what that next person is, that you're going to have to take on. It was just such you couldn't think too far ahead, because you literally didn't know what was coming later. And it was really cool.
And that's something kind of go back to the tabletop. Like you could absolutely 100%. That's an NPC generator. Like you were saying, it's a series of tables. Roll a d20, right? The thing is, like the smart thing, and the reason it wasn't just entirely random. It didn't feel just entirely random. Is you would bias these stats, right? So if you had burnt this orc to death, and he ends up coming back. Well, now he's back with a 20% resistance to fire damage, right? Or now, like because you killed him from the grass, right? You did a stealth kill. Now he has resistance to stealth kills, right? It's like they're learning, and what it does is it's that immersion where it's like the world is aware of what I've done, and it doesn't just feel like this is, I punched a dummy and it swung this way and then swung back. But these are meaningful kind of changes that are being made to the world based on what I've done. They make me feel like I live in this world and I'm informing the world. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I'll just say it's a shame that it got locked down. It got locked down by Warner. And so you didn't see, because for years I was like, why is no one doing the Nemesis system? Like, why is no one doing this? And it's because it was locked down. And which...
Now, by locked down, do you mean it was like patented
or whatever, like lawyers latched onto it?
Okay, got you.
Right, of like, we need to protect this thing, which is why you didn't see a meaningful advancement in the Nemesis system until Shadow of War. But what you did see was the mercenary system in Ubisoft's... what was it, the Greek one? Assassin's Creed, the Greek one.
Yeah. Odyssey.
I think it was Odyssey. I think had mercenaries, which was very different than the Nemesis system. But you could tell they were cousins. You could tell like there was some, you know what I mean? Like this was a different way to kind of get there. And so I was happy to see that, because as a creative, as someone who loves ideas, game designer, as a toy maker, it's like I want new ideas.
Yeah.
And if personally speaking, if an idea I have inspires someone else to build on that and make that even better, like that's a huge win for me. I don't take it as like, oh my God, they stole my shit. It's like, oh wow, I inspired this. That's incredibly humbling.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why it's sad for me when it becomes about like, look, I want to make money. I want money. I'm an American. I want money. But it's disappointing to me when it's like, oh, meaningful innovation has been stomped because people see this as a capitalist opportunity.
When we look at, things like systems like that, generally the first attempt is not a great one. Right. And I think this is a case where they actually did a great first attempt. Like it was wonderful. Right. But
yeah.
And I think, it was approved upon in Shadow of War. But like you said, I think there's a lot of people out there that would see that and be like, oh, we've got the tools, the resources, the world, the game in progress that could benefit off of something like this and make something, take that to another level.
Yeah.
That really sucks that it got to a point where it was locked down. I'm curious though. I actually do not know the answer to this at all. Are they working on a third game? Have we heard? Do we know if there's something else coming yet?
I've not heard if I haven't heard.
Yeah, I hadn't either.
They're not doing Gollum, right? They're not doing
that. That was part of my question because that's coming out soon. Like that's like
coming out soon. I don't know if they're
September
doing
or something.
I don't know, but I just think of like, man, like how cool would it be if like some really fun indie studio took the guts of the Nemesis system and made like a, basically an aquarium sim. Right, like keep the fish alive, and as they die, new fish come in to the tank, right? And it's like now they're resistant to this, or they're susceptible to this cleaning agents, and now you have to find a new way to keep the tank clean and stuff like that. Like I just like it's dumb stuff like that I wish was happening.
Yeah.
And by dumb to me is the highest compliment.
Right.
I love dumb stuff in media. Like give me that. Give me the aquarium sim whose brain is the Nemesis system. I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's go. But it's sad that we're not seeing that.
Yet. And hopefully, I didn't know that this had been locked down. Like this system had this kind. I'm gonna have to look into that a little bit because I'm always curious about things like that.
Yeah,
because
remember the article coming out a couple of years ago or whatever, and I was like, oh man,
like this stuff is so hard to enforce in our industry. So I'm curious, like how that's worded and what that actually looks like. Is I hadn't
a lot
heard
of times that kind of like the creative lockdown is really just a war of attrition.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, even if it's not defensible, like purely defensible, even if ultimately the judgment may not go in their favor, it's, do you have enough money?
Right.
To pay.
Yep.
For the time it will take for this to go through to trial.
Yeah.
Right. Or for a decision to be made. And that's kind of just the sad state of the American legal system.
It's terrible. Yeah. That's, oh man, there's like 5 different stories of how things went through that process came to mind as you said that. And it's just infuriating.
Like, see 80% of all cease and desist letters.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they may not be able to enforce it, but you don't have as much money as they do. So
yeah, man,
yeah, pull the video. Yeah. Whatever.
So where do you like, as we talk about games and like this has been 50 years, right? 50 years of games, roughly. Like that is such a small amount of time. Like think about how long we've had plays, right? And like, and novels and hundreds and thousands of years for some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And we are 50 years into this medium. It makes sense why we've pulled from these things that we've known for so long. But now that we see games come out that truly feel like they are video games first, right? Like Elden Ring, I think is a great example of a game. It's a video game, like it is a video game, and it is a great one. It's too hard for me, but it's it's a different type of thing. And the other thing I think about with that is the way they built the world with the height differences and how they kind of keep you contained to areas that you don't even realize you're contained. You can't get over to this thing yet. It's just very well done, and it's built like a great video game. So we're at the point now where we can say, we have good examples of this, Breath of the Wild and things like this. So how do we continue to innovate? Like, how do we get to the point where we kind of build upon that and then get to the point where people are like, oh, this is all video games are this way, or fit into, or we look at things and it'll be like, oh, they pulled that from somewhere else. You know what I mean?
It's like, and to kind of go back a bit, because it's awesome that you mentioned, like, if we talk about like the traditional like oral storytelling around the campfire to where we are now, right? Like that's a long path to get from here to there, or from there to here. So I'm not seeming like I'm damning video games for copying movies, right? Cinema's been around. Movie making, pictures, have been around over 100 years. And they were for a long time filmed plays.
Yeah. Yep.
They knew what they knew. And then someone early on, but someone eventually was like, wait a minute, what if we stopped filming, moved the camera, and then started filming again, and then taped the two together? Right. And that idea, huge moment.
Right.
Right. Because now it's like, oh, Well, now we can be complete tricksters, right? And then you have, someone who's like, well, what if we drastically changed the elements of each shot? Like, what if I stopped filming, removed a person or added a thing, and then started filming, and so the viewer just looked completely seamless, right? Of like, oh, this person was, talking, like these two people were talking, and then all of a sudden one frame change, two different people are talking, right? It's like you start to see like, oh, they're learning what this medium is and how it's different than its ancestors, right? And so you had, I forget his name, was it Millier or whatever, like the guy who did like the, the tomato can or the thing in the moon's eye and stuff like that, right? Like he was a huge innovator.
Yeah.
I don't know his name, but he's a huge innovator. No, but he's a huge innovator in film. And he learned that filming, even like, because theater already had plenty of tricks to fool the audience, and it had its own strengths as far as how to tell a story for an audience, right? In a way, like, until video games, there was no interactivity with the movie until William Castle came along, and that's its own thing, right? That's its own kind of innovation in film. But it's a similar thing of like what you need are those people who start to understand what is unique about the medium. Just as people started to understand how film was different than plays, and that you could, different in like, it could do a lot of other things, but then it was lacking in other ways. But started to learn is the strengths and weaknesses, started to learn the language of the medium and what was unique to it. We need that same thing to happen in video games. And again, we're seeing it in those small spaces, but really what you need is you need people who are able to dissect video game or to dissect interactive systems. Right? And so when I mean that, it's like everything from like what is being asked of the participants, right? Like whether it's like you need to speak or you need to move a certain way, you need to do whatever, right? You need input. That's what's interactive. It's like there's input and there's reaction. Right. Action and reaction. That's the basis of interactive media. But there's so much more happening there, right? Because it's like how are the participants being prompted to act? Right, that's a huge thing. A lot of times it's like, oh, it's a button prompt, or it's a UI, or it's some guy saying, shoot the helicopter. It's like, look at that, examine the prompt, examine anyone who. I taught a class over the summer. Basically, is this on critical game analysis. Basically, how to view what the game is asking and how it's reacting to it, and that tells you what its priorities are, right? So it's like, how is it prompting you to do something? What is it asking you to do? How intense is it asking you to do it? How is it reacting? How grand is the reaction? And then how does that kind of loop, right? And it's like what you're going to see is you kind of take one system and you break it down into a bunch of individual nodes. You're going to see opportunity where that interactivity can start to tell a story. And again, it's about like, it's someone at some point was like, what if we stopped the cinematic when someone spoke and we presented the player with 3 different reactions, right? That's dialogue options, right? That's dialogue choice. Like someone did that. Someone stopped and they're like, what if this happened, right? It's like we need more of that. Someone was like, hey, what if, it's similar to the dialogue option of like, hey, what if instead of just asking them to press X to jump, we ask them to press X, X, Y. And then if they failed, they didn't just die, something else happened, right? Quick time event. Like that is storytelling. And for all the meme videos, someone running through a rain-slick street in heavy rain and never hitting a button prompt and still somehow surviving and making it into the street. Like it's easy to poke fun at that stuff, but it's like ultimately at the end of the day, guess what? The person who did that, who put the controller down and let Norman Jaden get hit by a bunch of cars as he's running across the street, has a different story to tell of what happened in their game than me, who landed half of them, right? It's like you need people who are willing and able to think critically about what it is that's happening in story or happening in systems and how to apply stories. And if I had all the answers, by God, I'd be doing it. But that's what you need. And that's why it's imperative, I think, I have worked with people who were like, I want to hire the very best writers. It's like, that's awesome. Hire great writers. What you're going to get are great writers.
Right.
right? And then what you're going to get are people who are great designers, and they're going to have to work together. And that's totally viable, totally valid. But what we need, if we don't have one person who's a great designer and writer, if we have a great designer, if we have a great writer, what we need is them to be able to talk with each other, which means we need to start establishing language that is particular to narrative design. And part of that is writers aren't narrative designers aren't writers. You can be both. You can have both skills, but they're not the same. But we can't even agree on that as an industry, and we need to fix that. You know,
dude, there's so many problems with that,
right?
Just the positions and skill sets and job requirements across the board are just like a mess in this industry.
It's a mess. It's a mess. And yeah, it's like, you know, it's like saying like, I'm a game designer. Cool.
Right.
System, combat, narrative, mission, progression. Like, what do you design?
Yeah.
Like if you tell me you're a game designer, I assume you are a generalist.
Right.
Right. And if you say you're a game designer and it can't speak to the myriad aspects of design that exist currently in video games and that will exist in future concepts of interactive media, then it's like, I don't know, man, do better.
Yeah.
It's one of those things like we really as an cement some of this stuff down better, because we're confusing we're trying to have a conversation where we're confusing our own terms.
Yeah.
And it's like that's like that we're never going to get it's not that we're never going to get anywhere. It's like we're not going to make the advances as quickly as we could if we just could, you know, agree kind of on a lingua franca first.
Yeah. It was funny too.
I've had experiences.
Yeah.
Love that. Same, homie, same.
It's funny you were talking about how, like, I think especially as teams and companies get bigger, you tend to hire specialists, right? Like I need an animator. I want the best animator I can get, right? But when you're talking about design and writing, like you were talking about, I go back to what we talked about when we started this episode, which is we were out drinking and collaborating, right? Like, and, you know, I'm not a writer but, you know, I understand narrative, but those conversations that we would have and really getting into like, why is this important to you? Why is this important to the overall thing that we're building? And then, okay, so as I'm designing something, I need to make sure that this part that's important to the people in narrative, that's important to the people in art, that's, you know, like those things need to be at the forefront of my mind in everything that I'm doing. And it's about that collaboration.
Right. And collaboration is the key. Like every project is going to have its different priorities, and that, you know, you need to rely on whoever the vision holders and project management is to make sure the priorities are correct, right? As far as like, you know, as far as the experience, like what is going to inform more of the experience, right? But like that collaboration is absolutely of making sure, like as a writer, because, you know, we're obviously having a writing heavy conversation, but it's important to me, like when working with writers, is like you need to work with the other disciplines and understand how to work with the disciplines, which means knowing a little bit about everyone. I think it's important for every discipline to have a fundamental understanding of every other discipline, right? Because you need to work with them, because that's video games. Is art needs to work with programming, needs to work with design, needs to work with narrative, needs to work with animation, needs to work with everything, right? We all need to work together, which means we need to be able to talk. And like, I don't expect the writers to be experts on environment art, but they should kind of understand the basic concept of what environment art is, so that they can talk to the environment artists and directors and stuff like that as far as what's important for them. But again, it comes down to, I never want to be the dictator. It's not how I operate. It's not how I want to be. Like, I have a studio full of experts that we hired because they are interesting people with good ideas, right? That's what we want out of a studio. And so if all you're doing is executing exactly what I'm telling you to do, then I'm not taking advantage of what you bring to the studio.
Yeah.
You're at that point, you're just a machine. I may as well just replace you with software. Right? It's like that's not what I want. That's not why you were hired. And so it's about making sure that there's room for that personal expression within the boundaries of whatever the project is and all various aspects that are part of that conversation. But it's super important that you are inspiring and guiding and not dictating. Right.
Man.
So it's like when you are having that conversation with environment art, there's room for their ideas, their personality, their perspective to shine.
Yeah. And, I would take that even a step further. I don't even think it's a room. I think it's, and this is one of the things that as we were early in the development of Agents of Mayhem, one of the things that I really loved was the collaboration aspect, right? Where we were like, hey, let's get an expert in each discipline to come together and kind of focus with equal, say on a particular feature. That there were problems to that, right? When there were disagreements, there was never anyone that said this is the thing that should happen. There were definitely problems, but I think there were really good things when it was like an animator could say, this is what I think is important. This is what I could contribute. This is how I could make this thing cool. When, and that stuff is really important when you're thinking about people being experts and that cohesiveness being something that comes together to make something special.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in both the strength and weakness of that. And I think really what you where that is happening, but ultimately there's a decision maker, or at least a better expression of like kind of project priority and goals.
Yeah.
And so I was just talking to someone yesterday about this, but kind of like my leadership style has, over time, when I'm working with other people, is it ultimately, like, you were making a game, decisions need to be made, things need to happen, right? Like the art team may need a decision made by Thursday, right? So it's like, okay, all right, or the mission team needs a decision by Monday, or they need whatever, they need one of these two, whatever, they need choices, they need decisions. That's ultimately what we're doing in video games, is making decisions. And communicating them. That's video games. There's the magic. Is I will say, this is what we're going to do, right? Like so they need a concept for this mission to get from this point in the story to this point in the story, whatever. Okay, this is what we're going to do, unless someone comes up with a better idea, right? So I kind of provide like the fallback, the fail-safe, like, this is what we're going to do. And really what I'm doing is I'm not presenting like I'm not intentionally anyway presenting a bad idea. I'm presenting something I think works.
Yeah.
But really what it is, it's a challenge to everyone else involved to do better. Like, beat that.
I love that.
And I want them to do that. It's kind of unexpressed, but I want them to do that. Give me a better idea. Plus one this idea. Or get to the same thing it needs to get to a totally different way. And what I found that does is, I'm not sweating the fact that no decision has been made, because it's like, look, we can always do this thing.
Right. There's a fail safe, right?
There's a fail safe, right? It's doing what it needs to do, but also there's, hopefully inspiring other people, because some people will see it as a challenge. Some people will see it as like a canvas or a coloring book that they can add their own stuff to. And that's great. That's exactly what I want. Right. And what I've also found, though, there are some people who are like, well, decisions are made, I guess I'll just, and it's like, no, okay, that's a different part of managing people. But yeah, that's kind of how I approach things now. It's like, I give the fail safe.
That's really interesting. I think that's something that I need to kind of adopt into my philosophy. Cause so far I'm very much here's your box, right? Cause like the thing that I love to do is be like, here's our overall goals. Here's our overall like projections. Here's the things that we need to develop. Right. And here's kind of the initial vision, I guess I should say, and then hand someone a box to work within. Right. And be like, hey, I want you to go wild inside of this box. Right. And if we need to expand the parameters of this box, that's okay too. Right. But we just need a place to start. I want you to have that creative freedom inside of this. I want you to do the things that you know how to do. I'm not a micromanager at all. Right. I'm much more of a like, here's our general vision. We kind of all are on the same page of where this is going. Right. But this is the thing that I want you to excel within. But I generally currently don't give that kind of baseline idea. And the thing, and what I love about that is it reminds me of the time that I was at Oddworld, where what we were constantly doing was each person would see what everyone else was doing, and we would try to one up each other. And the whole thing was like this friendly, competitive rivalry where it was all in love. It was all in making the game better. Where we're like, oh, you did that. Oh, I can do something better than that. And it would spark ideas, right? And that iteration is what we continue to build. And that's what you're talking about. It's a really good kind of combination of those two things.
Thank you. Yeah. And what I have found greedily, selfishly as the lead is I get more ideas to play with. Right? Because people are pitching me because they want to be, they want to be the person who provides the answer. Right? So it's more fun and just, as a lead to be like, oh, we totally could do that. Or we could take that from this idea and mix it with this idea and whatever, right? And like fix things. And it just becomes a really fun, I don't know, I love ideas. That's why it's why I wake up in the morning, right? It's why I create stuff. I love ideas. And I want new ideas from people and new ideas in my games. That's what I want. So.
It's funny. I wake up and say what I love is problems. I love to solve problems. So like and that was the thing that for me I realized in my when I was over the last few years, I was at Full Sail doing adjacent game development stuff, right? But the thing that I was missing was that like the thing about game development that I love the most is every day there's a new problem that needs to be solved and probably a new solution to solve it, right? Because even if it's the same problem I've had before, I've got a new team, I've got a new set of requirements, I've got there's so many other things, and I can lean on that knowledge, but the solution is going to be a unique solution. That's exciting to me.
Yeah. And in video games especially, right, is you could only provide the same solution so many times.
Yep.
Before it's like, well, now you're just not doing anything
Derivative.
new, and right, and you're what's happening, the player is now becoming disengaged.
Yep.
Because whether it is an active part of their thought process or not, they rely on some sense of progression and innovation, and that requires new ideas and new solutions, right? And it's like we have seen that done well in kind of recontextualization of existing systems. You see that a lot. That falls a lot on the writing team and mission design, right? Of like, look, these are the verbs you have. These are the areas you have to verb them in. Add another 2 hours to the game.
Right.
It's like, all right, well, but also like we have seen it done poorly in that like we're adding completely new verbs 25 hours in, and it's like, well, this feels like something I should have had 2 hours in. Right. I'm not against learning new stuff, getting new toys 25 hours in. But when it's something you're like, why didn't I have this early?
Yeah.
That's a bit of a kind of as a gamer. So.
Well, even think of it from a development standpoint. We often get late in the process and realize there's a change we need to make. Right. Yeah. And that's tough because it's like, how didn't we foresee that? But it's so iterative. And that's something that people outside of this that have never been through this process often don't understand is we come in with our best ideas and our best plan. Mm-hmm. By the time we get to the end, it's like at best 50% of what we initially thought it was going to be.
Yeah. It's funny because when you first started talking about that, I was imagining kind of a toothpaste tube where it's like making a game isn't just starting at the end of the toothpaste tube and squeezing all the toothpaste out, right? It's like, no, there are people just coming in, just squeezing random parts of the tube, getting toothpaste out. And you're like, I have to make this, I have to smooth this out. And it's just like, it's so.
Suddenly there's another opening in the tube and you're like, wait a minute.
Right. Right. Which is to say, it's not like, for those, because that's a weird analogy, but for those, to make it a little more concrete, it's like, it's not that the problem is like, oh, we found a problem at the beginning. And now we found a problem here, 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 and here. Oh, good. Now they're all fixed.
Right.
Like these are not sequential issues. These are like, we found a problem here. Okay, we found a problem here. 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 And as you provide solutions to the problem, that can change and inform everything that came before it, everything that came after it, which might include you just created the problem here.
Yep.
Like your solution in the 18th hour just fucked your third hour, so fix it.
I love it. Right? And that's the thing that people also often don't understand is sometimes the best solution to a problem that must be solved causes other problems that now have to be solved. Right.
And you're gonna be annoyed. You're gonna be angry at those. But you're exactly right. It's like this solve is the big win.
Yep.
And you just bought yourself 3 weeks of fixing smaller leaks, but this was the fucking gusher that needed fixed.
Yep.
And it's like, it's one of those things of like, sometimes you don't know you're building a house on toothpicks until you've built enough of the house where the shit starts to wobble.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like, oh no. And it's like, look, you can keep going, but you know the answer is to fix the foundation.
Yeah, man, the later in the project that happens, the harder it is too.
Right.
Because we get to a point where we're like, you know what? We have our plan. We've got 6 months left. We know what we needed to do to fix this game, but there's this problem that has to be solved this way, which means we have to now course correct some portion of the game to make sure that we fix that problem. But you have to do it. And this is why sometimes we delay games. This is why sometimes we have to crunch more at the end. Because we don't do that because we just on a whim want to do something. It's almost always because there's a problem we have to solve.
Yeah. There are a lot of times the stuff you're talking about as far as like delays and crunch, stuff like that. There's a lot of times that is because of unnecessary meddling.
Boy.
Right? Just as a for instance, there are a lot of times that's because of feature creep. Sometimes it's because the market has changed and now new things need to happen to be considered competitive. Right? Like there are a lot of the kind of demons and shadows you hear about is in video game development. Like, yes, there's sometimes when a game gets delayed, it is one of those things. In fact, maybe even the majority.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, sometimes it's just, you know what? Our plan was wrong. Or
the landscape has changed, right?
The plan needs to change, right? When I say wrong, it's not like there's someone to, it's like, the best ideas rarely survive contact with reality. That's just how it is. Like it's great. Like, in your head and on paper, there are things that are absolutely brilliant. But then when you make them and they become a game, they become something that a player with a controller in their hand has to do.
Yeah.
Or art needs to execute on, or the engine needs to account for. Shit breaks. Shit doesn't work. It's not what you want.
There's even, and this is the one that people have a hard time dealing with, a good idea that's not right for this game at this time.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Like the game you're working on is not going to be a canvas of your best ideas.
Yep.
It's going to be the ideas that work best for the project. And they're not all going to be super innovative, amazing things because they can't all be and shouldn't all be.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, but they're going to be. But it's about the gestalt, right? It's about the everything together. And if you have something that is weak, especially something that's kind of a load-bearing idea, isn't working, then it needs to change.
Yeah. Man. So we've only got like 10 minutes left. These go by way too fast.
They really fast. I can't believe it. Oh my God. Yeah.
But okay. So first of all, is there anything you want to make sure we cover? Do you have anything on your mind currently?
Well, so I mean, really, the big thing is, and I guess anyone who's, so they don't get lost in the weeds as far as someone who wants to get involved in the discipline, who actively works in the discipline, is get good at writing first and foremost.
Yeah.
Which is learn the tools of all the other media because they're relevant, and we're not going to ignore and forget about them as video games evolve. We're going to learn them. We're going to learn how they work particular to video games, and they will most definitely inform what storytelling in video games is 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So get your foundations in. But again, don't neglect design. Learn to think critically about what games are doing, both in the storytelling space, the direct, what we traditionally consider a storytelling space, but also just in the design space, which isn't to say you need to be an expert on both, but like you learn as much as you can and think as much as you can and just listen, like watch. Listen to game dev with a shot of Jameson and learn from people who talk about this stuff.
I love that. But the way that I like to think about that particular thing is have empathy, right? Like think about what these other disciplines are having to deal with. Think about what they care about, what their struggles are, what's important to them. Because if you even have and this is just in life, have empathy, right? Like just in general, learn to have empathy, and that's going to help you across the board. But in game development, this is one of the things that early on really helped me kind of, make a name for myself and kind of put me in a position where I could continue to grow, because I was constantly talking to people about what's important to you. What are you struggling with? What about this idea? I can see on your face you're struggling, right? Like you've got something on your mind. Let's talk about it. Why is this frustrating to you? What would you prefer? Like those conversations, they take no time at all. To get an understanding about what someone else that you're working next to cares about in the thing that you're doing.
Yeah, kind of just to kind of build on that a little bit. Like, if you are currently, or you end up moving leadership management role of any kind, when you see someone whose work is not to standard, right, or not to par, or whatever, right? It's rarely I have found, because if you've done the work, you've learned their competencies through the interview process and the hiring process and the training process, right? And if they're still there, let's assume for this scenario that they're good at their job, right? That they can execute. So if you find that people are not doing the work to the standard that the project is demands, or is asked of them, then it's almost certainly not the ability. It's usually not the ability, right? It's some other aspect. They're hitting some other hurdle, some other issue. It could be personal, it could be technical, it could be that they are disengaged from the project or don't understand the project. And so, the worst people in management are the ones that open the door and go like, why are you fucking up? Do better. Right? Those are the worst people. Don't work with those people. Don't encourage those people. Just don't. I'll just say it. Don't. Fuck those people. Like, I don't like them. Like, they need to learn to do better. They're the ones who need to do it. Have empathy. Understand that the reason people aren't doing it is probably not because they're awful at their job.
Yep.
Right? It's something else is happening, something else is forming. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Like that, like you were saying, have empathy in life. Give the benefit of the doubt in life, because lacking empathy and being the hard ass, all that does is it saps away empathy from other people, and you end up just creating a nation of hard asses who went to the school of hard knocks or whatever bullshit they're putting on fucking trucks these days, right? Like, stop, be a good person.
Be a good person. What
a good person.
What a simple yet often misunderstood sentiment, right? Like it's so easy to be selfish, right? Just in general, you're always concerned about yourself. The second you take the effort to realize that person also feels the same way about their self that you do about yourself, like that is an eye-opening experience. And that thought process has allowed me to create some of the best friendships that I've ever had in this industry across discipline, because we've connected in a way that you don't always get to,
I think in friendship and in family and in love, like, empathy is absolutely paramount. Giving the benefit of the doubt is absolutely essential. And I think, it's just, for me, it's kind of the guiding light of, like, I've had to have really hard conversations with people I didn't want to have conversations with. But I find that if I'm kind of led by empathy and love, then life is easier to navigate.
I would say that it always will be.
And
we're talking life lessons now too.
Look, if you have that in your heart, in aspect of your life, you're just gonna be a better person. You're gonna be a better collaborator. You're gonna be better everything. So
it's easy to be selfish. We're used to being selfish. It's hard to care about others, and that's just a philosophy in any industry, but this is the one we're in. This is the one where I know that it matters, because everything we do every day is personal, right? Like we're putting ourselves into everything we do every day. And the more that we understand what others care about and the work they're trying to put into that, it's valuable. It's just really valuable.
Yeah. And not to try to force this into the video game development, but it's like like the player with the controller in their hand playing your game, like you to steal a phrase from my friend Elizabeth Sampat, like you're creating an empathy engine, right? Like you are creating an experience for someone. And if you don't understand humanity, if you don't understand the human experience, if you don't understand the thing that you are making and the larger context in which its ideas live, then you're ultimately making a kind of cold, shallow experience. So, the better at being a human in a world you are, the better games you can make.
Yeah. We got a question in the chat. How do you combat manipulation with that philosophy? And I think personally, it's about going into it with a genuine, heart and desire, right? Like that's not the goal, right? And I think if you go into it with you're going into to be sympathetic and empathetic, right? Like I'm not going into like, what do you care about so I can try to do something with that? That's like, that's noticeable. You know what I mean? Like, I think you pick up on that kind of thing pretty quickly.
I think there's a stereotype that people who are like, I often call myself a Pollyanna. I look for the best in people, and I try to be a really positive person. And I try to be an optimist. And this is, I'm coming to that philosophy as someone who's gone through a significant amount of pain, as someone who struggles with very severe mental illness. It's not fucking easy to be an optimist in this world, and it's not fucking easy to be an optimist with my particular brain chemistry, but I fucking do it anyway.
Especially right now. Like,
what's that?
Especially right now.
Yeah. So what I like to say is I go in with an open heart. I go in with open eyes. Like I'm not unaware that there are selfish, manipulative assholes in this world, and I look for those signs, but I don't let the potential for manipulation and pain stop me from being what I consider to be a good person.
Yeah.
Like if you are like, look, any meaningful connection you have with someone else is going to open yourself up to the possibility of pain. And I think our natural tendency is to like put on the armor and guard ourselves from pain.
Yeah.
And I understand that instinct. I understand that, but it's like, you can't live inside that. You can't live inside those walls. Not meaningful. You have to the potential for pain, but don't be a sucker. You don't have to be. Being an empathetic person, being a good-hearted person doesn't mean that you're a sucker. Doesn't mean that you're a victim. You can have a kind of shield ready for when you need it, but you don't have to put it in front of you all the time.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. We've hit time. We're going to stop there because I know you have to get going, and we can talk forever. So,
oh my God, yes! Any time, Jameson, I will come.
We're gonna find an excuse to do this again.
I'm so happy to be invited. I'd come talk on your show anytime, man.
Well, we're gonna do it again soon.